everyone. Welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Mike.
And I'm Karen. Today we have a lesson. It's called The Development of the Rugby Ball. Rugby ball. Have you ever played rugby before?
I have. I played rugby from when I was a little kid until the end of high school.
So just out of curiosity, because
Yes.
I have never played rugby before, so it's shaped like American football, right?
Kind of.
Like that oval
A
shape.
little fatter and a little rounder, but I think the Chinese word olive ball
Olive ball.
is a very good one because they both sort of have an olive-shaped ball. It's not round like a soccer or basketball.
Okay, well, how is it fun? Is it very scary and dangerous?
It's one of those really fun games that looks scary if you watch it on TV.
Yes.
But if you learn how to play it when you're 7 or 8 years old and nothing can hurt you and no one is very strong, it's a lot of fun.
Really?
So I think it's one of those sports that you have to start young, because if you tried to do it when you're 20 years old, you might go, oh, this is crazy, and you could get hurt.
And this is too much, right?
Right, but as a young person, it's so much fun because you're throwing your friends around and they're throwing you around and everyone's falling in the mud, and it can be great fun.
But is that the same as American football, though?
They are a little bit different. One of the things you'll probably notice with rugby is they don't wear all that equipment.
Oh,
right?
like the helmet, the pads.
American football has big helmets, big pads. The players look like knights or soldiers with all their protection. Whereas rugby, they basically wear a soccer uniform, a shirt, shorts, socks, and shoes. They might have little pads here these days, but that's about it. And of course, the other thing is that in American football, we've all seen the quarterback throwing the ball forward and someone catches it, and that's all wonderful and exciting. In rugby, you cannot throw the ball forward.
Oh,
the
really?
ball must always go backwards somehow. So that's a big difference.
Oh, I really didn't know, but it sounds kind of fun. But do you think it's dangerous to play?
I don't think so, but you want to be careful, and you certainly want to play it with a coach and someone who can show you how to play it safely, because then everyone can have a good time. But like a lot of sports, yeah, you can get hurt doing it, but you can get hurt bowling.
That's true. Well, let's learn more about rugby.
Why is it that in sports like basketball, baseball, tennis, and soccer, the ball is round, but in rugby it is shaped like an egg? The reason has to do with how rugby balls are produced. In 1832, the first rugby balls were made by shoemakers Richard Linden and William Gilbert, who used pig bladders covered with leather to make their balls. These balls were shaped like plums and were filled with air by blowing into them through clay pipes. However, the bladders had a terrible smell, and inflating them sometimes even led to death if any of the bladders was diseased. In fact, it's believed that Linden's wife died after inflating too many rugby balls.
All right, so yeah, we're going to be learning all about the development of the rugby ball, or how that funny-shaped ball became that funny-shaped ball.
Okay, let's start. Why is it that in sports like basketball, baseball, tennis, and soccer, the ball is round, but in rugby, it is shaped like an egg? Yes, that's how I would describe it too, right? If you
An
were to
egg.
describe like a pointy kind of egg, right?
Right, an egg, an olive, an oval. We can also
Oval,
talk
that's
about
right.
that sort of flat circle. That's an oval shape. Yeah.
That's right. And the reason has to do with how rugby balls are produced, and that means how they are made.
Interesting. You'd think that since it's a game where you carry the ball, having that different shaped ball makes it easier to hold, but it's nothing to do with that.
That's right.
It's how they were made. Very interesting. Let's go back in time. It says in 1832, the first rugby balls were made by shoemakers Richard Linden and William Gilbert, who used pig bladders covered with leather to make their balls. And I believe...
Did you just say, wait. Did you just say pig bladders?
I did. Yeah. They're
Really?
using animal parts. And I believe Gilbert might still be a company that makes rugby balls.
Oh.
I seem to remember the name
The
Gilbert
name on the
ball.
on the
yeah.
rugby.
Anyway, so back in the old days, they didn't have plastic and modern things like that we use today. So they had to use natural things, and in this case, they used the pig's bladder. So it's basically the place in your body where you hold all your pee. It's kind of like your stomach. It's a balloon, it's a bag, it stretches. So they use that to make the shape. Of course, you can fill it with air. And then they covered it with leather to, stop it from popping like a balloon or something. What is leather?
Well, leather is a noun. It's a kind of material, and it's an animal skin that is chemically treated to preserve it, usually, to make like bags, shoes, and sometimes even furniture too. So if you want to buy like real leather something, it's usually quite expensive, right?
Absolutely, yes. And of
Or
course,
leather jackets.
That's right. And of course, we use animals like cows traditionally, but you can use pigs, sheep. I've heard of alligator leather, ostrich leather, things like that. But most of the things like your shoes, your belt, a leather jacket, that's usually made from cow skin, cow leather. Yeah.
So for example, Fred wore a suit and black leather shoes to work. So I'm guessing the leather shoes probably cost quite a lot.
I'm glad he didn't wear a black leather suit to work. That would be a little too rock and roll.
That's true. And it would be a little bit hot, especially in the summertime. Okay, let's continue. These balls were shaped like plums and were filled with air by blowing into them through clay pipes.
Very
blowing air into them through clay pipes.
Through clay pipes,
Like pipes that are made of clay, right?
Pipes made of clay. Of course, now we would probably use a plastic pipe and, you pump up your soccer ball or your basketball to make sure it bounces. So they were doing the same thing, just using simpler equipment. However, the bladders had a terrible smell because they were where the pig used to keep the pee. And it's also just from a dead animal. So, however, the bladders had a terrible smell, and inflating them sometimes even led to death if any of the bladders was diseased.
Oh no!
Oh my God! So I guess the air inside could be poisonous, and as you're blowing into it, if that air goes back into you, it could make you very sick or even die. That's incredible.
Wow.
People must have really loved rugby.
I guess
I'm gonna blow up the ball. I might die, but afterwards, hey, maybe we'll have a good game.
They probably didn't know though until it actually happened, right?
I don't know. I've never heard this, but yeah, it really did happen, and actually, it happened to one of the people who was making them, or at least a close family member, as we read. In fact, it's believed that Lyndon's wife died after inflating too many rugby balls.
Oh, that's so sad.
So I guess she was slowly getting poisoned or something.
And she probably didn't know, right?
No, you wouldn't think that's going to make you sick, and then she gets sick and she dies, all because of blowing up these rugby balls.
I hope they don't use pig bladders anymore.
They do not.
Okay,
Trust me,
good.
as kids, we would not have played with a stinky ball. All right, let's come back after the break and find out more about this very interesting story.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。今天的课程是关于橄榄球的发展史 ，The Development of the Rugby Ball。同学们有没有想过，为什么橄榄球不是圆的，反而是像蛋的形状呢？这个原因是跟橄榄球制作的方式有关。在1832年，最早的橄榄球是由鞋匠 Richard Linden 和 William Gilbert 所制造的。他们用包裹着皮革的猪膀胱来制作球。那这些球的形状像李子，它的充气方式呢是透过陶管把空气吹到里面。不过那些膀胱有一种难闻的味道，那要是其中一个膀胱有染病，充气有时候是会导致人死亡的。好，那事实上呢 ，Richard Linden 的妻子就被认为是给太多橄榄球充气后而死亡的。Mike 老师刚刚用到 incredible 来描述 ，incredible 可以形容是惊人的、难以置信的。再来看单字 leather 它表示皮革或者是皮革制品，它也可以当形容词来形容是皮的、皮革制的。好，那说到动物皮，说我们熟知的牛皮呀、羊皮，老师还有提到鳄鱼皮和鸵鸟皮。那我们补充一下 ，alligator 就是鳄鱼、短吻鳄，那么 ostrich 是指鸵鸟。好，这边两个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来看第一个重点是 have to do with 是表达跟什么什么有关。那么在 have 和 to do 之间可以加入 something、nothing 等等的字词来表达两者的关联程度。我们说 A have nothing to do with B， 表示 A 和 B 完全无关。 A have something to do with B 表示 A 与 B 有一些关系。A have a lot to do with B 表示 A 与 B 大有关系。例如 I'm not sure what she's upset about. It probably has something to do with her boyfriend. 我不确定她在不高兴什么可能是跟她的男朋友有关吧。好，下一个重点是 It's believed 加上 that 子句，这是表达一般认为怎么样怎么样，据信怎么样怎么样。其中的 it 是虚主词，用来代替后面的 that 子句。举例来说 It is believed that the temple is over 800 years old.一般认为那座寺庙有超过800年的历史。那其实我们也可以把这个 that 子句的主词移到句首，然后把句型写作主词加上 be believed to 加上原形动词。那刚刚的例句就可以改写成 The temple is believed to be over 800 years old。好，那我们接着回到课文中。
In 1870, Linden replaced the bladders with rubber tubes, which also changed the shape into more of an oval. In the early 1980s, leather was replaced with synthetic material. The new material held on to less moisture and made the ball easier to handle. These are the balls still in use today, but as materials science continues to advance, who knows how the rugby ball might change in the future.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were just learning about how these rugby balls were made. And, it was kind of interesting, but kind of sad.
And disgusting.
Yeah, disgusting is the word. Use pigs' bladders, right? And then some people actually died from it because if the pig has some disease, people can actually die from this, right?
Because they had to blow it up using air from their own body. And of course, if you're that close to a sick part of a dead animal, it could make you sick too, and it did.
That's right.
And so then they realized things had to change. They had to have a better way of making these balls, and luckily they did. It says in 1870, Linden replaced the bladders with rubber tubes, which also changed the shape into more of an oval. Very interesting. So it became much more common and much easier for people to use rubber, of course, from rubber trees, rubber plants, to make rubber boots and tires for your car or whatever, and they started to use those. They replaced the old pig's bladder with these rubber balloons, basically. To replace something is to take A and get rid of it and bring in B, probably because A is old and broken and worn out. When you replace something, generally you're taking something you had before that is not working so well anymore, and then you get rid of it and you get another one that is very similar or maybe even exactly the same to do the same job, right? If you drop your phone in the ocean, you're probably going to have to replace your phone, not with something really weird, but probably with a very similar phone. For example, the old sofa was replaced with 2 chairs. Okay, so there's still things to sit on, slightly different, but they're going to get rid of the old sofa and get some new chairs instead.
Okay, well, let's continue to learn about rugby balls. So now they're made from rubber, right? So I guess it's much safer than pig's bladder.
Right.
Okay, well, in the early 1980s, leather was replaced with synthetic material. The new material held on to less moisture and made the ball easier to handle. Okay, so they use a new material that has less moisture, right?
Exactly.
And the moisture is our vocabulary word, and that is a noun. So basically, it's a small amount of liquid to make something wet or moist. So for example, the desert air does not have much moisture because it is very, very dry.
Right, when we talk about the air being humid, the air is thick and feels wet. That's moisture in the air. Not exactly water, right? It's little drops of water. That's generally what we think of when we say moisture. So these new synthetic kind of plastic balls were much easier to handle than the old leather balls. When you handle something, we're using this as a verb, that means you basically hold it in your hands. You're doing stuff with it, you're not putting it down, you're manipulating it, you're moving it back and forth, whatever it might be. If you're handling things that break easily, you need to be quite careful. You wouldn't give your beautiful glass sculpture to a small child because they might not not handle it carefully, they might
True.
drop it or bang it against something and break it. And of course, if anyone gives you a little baby, you have to handle that baby very carefully because you don't want to do anything like drop the baby. That would be terrible. Luckily, babies are also made of synthetic material and no, of course. But be careful when you're handling things that are precious and delicate. Here's something to be very careful when you're handling. This box contains my new TV, so handle it with care. And often on the boxes of things like televisions or computers,
True.
things you don't want to drop, it might actually say handle with care.
That's
Be
right.
careful with it. Don't bang it or drop it.
Because it breaks easily,
It breaks
right?
easily. And actually, I remember those leather balls when I was a kid. We didn't like playing with them because they were heavy and they got wet and they were no fun. So whenever you could choose, you'd always get the shiny new plastic ball.
All right, okay. So these are the balls still in use today. But as material science continues to advance, who knows how the rugby ball might change in the future? You are right. Maybe they would still improve or change the material. It might be easier to handle, right?
Absolutely. They're making all sorts of advances in science, including sports science, and that often makes it better for the players and more entertaining for the fans. To advance something is basically to move forward. If you take a few steps forward, you are advancing. You are moving forward. For example, our understanding of the universe has advanced rapidly throughout the 20th century. 100 years ago, some people thought the moon was made of cheese. Now we know it's not. It's made of tofu.
That's right. And right now we have a what do you think question. So besides rugby, what is a sport that involves an oddly shaped item or ball? Why do you think the item or ball is shaped the way it is? Okay, well, right off the top of my head, I can think of maybe hockey.
Ooh,
so
good
you would
one.
have the hockey stick and you have the puck. So
Yes.
it's not a ball,
No.
but it's like a flat circular item, right?
Yeah.
It's round shaped, but it's flat. And then it kind of like, can hit it on ice and it'll go really far.
Slides really well.
That's right.
And you use it like a ball in the sport, but it definitely is not a ball. It's a puck. P-U-C-K.
That's right.
So
Why do
there
you think
go.
it's shaped that way?
That's a good question. I think, well, if it was round, it would bounce
True.
over the stick. It's got a slide. And another thing I know is that before they use the puck, they put it in the freezer. It has to be super cold to slide well.
So if it's not super cold, then it will not slide.
It won't slide well. So if
Really?
you're planning a hockey game, put your puck in the freezer a few hours before, and the game will be much more fun. So there you go. Weird things in sports. It's not hard to find them. I'm sure you guys can think of a few. What is that badminton thing? What is that all about?
Shuttlecock.
That's another
The one with
weird-
the feather?
The birdie, the shuttlecock. There's one you can chat about.
That's right.
Have another chat about some weird things in sports. I'm sure it won't be hard to think of some examples. Thanks for joining us, guys. Take care of yourselves. Catch a rugby game on TV if you have a chance. It's always entertaining and very muddy. And we'll see you back here soon.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time.
对着猪膀胱吹气，不但恶心难闻，而且还有致命的风险。那么，在1870年 ，Richard Linden 他用橡胶管取代猪膀胱，那这让它的形状变得比较像椭圆形。那么，在1980年代初期，皮革被合成材料取代了。那么，新的材料就保留了较少的水分，而且让球更容易操控。这些球呢，是到现在都还在使用的球哦。不过，随着材料科学不断进步，未来也许会有其他的变化，就让我们拭目以待吧。好，单字 replace 这个动词就表示以什么取代、替换、代替。Replace A with B 表示用 B 取代 A。那么 moisture 它是名词，表示水分或是湿气。Handle 这个动词呢，则是表达拿、用手拿、触摸或是搬运，它也有处理的意思。麦克老师解释的时候，他用到 manipulate，M-A-N-I-P-U-L-A-T-E，manipulate 可以表达操纵、操控的意思。再来 advance 在文中是当动词，表示使什么进展啊、进步、发展。这个字其实也可以当名词，表示进展、提升。好，那老师们最后就聊到非圆形的球具。这时候有提到 hockey 就是曲棍球，它可以指陆上的曲棍球，也可以指冰上的曲棍球。那在这边两位老师指的是冰上曲棍球，那你也可以用 ice hockey 来特别指冰上曲棍球。 好，那这种运动他们所用那种圆盘形的球叫做 puck，P-U-C-K 这个冰球。老师们还有聊到羽毛球运动所用的这个羽球形状也是很奇怪。那么 shuttlecock 或者是叫 birdie 就可以指羽毛球这种羽球咯。好，这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来看这个重点是 more of 或 and 加上名词，表示比较像是什么什么，用什么什么来描述比较贴切。那么后面呢，也可以接比较的对象，就会写作 more of A than B， 是表达说比较像是 A 而不是 B， 与其说是 B， 不如说是 A。假设朋友问说，刚刚在你旁边那个男的是你朋友吗？那如果不是很熟，你就可以回答说He's more of an acquaintance than a friend. 他比较像是点头之交，而不是朋友啦。好，那么注意一下，比较的对象呢，也可以是形容词、复数名词、不定词或者是动名词。可是这时候呢，不会加 of， 通常就写作 more A than B。例如 ，The sauce was more salty than spicy. 那个酱比较咸，而不是辣。好，以上是今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Why is it that in sports like basketball, baseball, tennis, and soccer, the ball is round, but in rugby it is shaped like an egg? The reason has to do with how rugby balls are produced. In 1832, the first rugby balls were made by shoemakers Richard Linden and William Gilbert, who used pig bladders covered with leather to make their balls. These balls were shaped like plums and were filled with air by blowing into them through clay pipes. However, the bladders had a terrible smell, and inflating them sometimes even led to death if any of the bladders was diseased. In fact, it's believed that Linden's wife died after inflating too many rugby balls. In 1870, Linden replaced the bladders with rubber tubes, which also changed the shape into more of an oval. In the early 1980s, leather was replaced with synthetic material. The new material held on to less moisture and made the ball easier to handle. These are the balls still in use today, but as materials science continues to advance, who knows how the rugby ball might change in the future.
Hi, I'm Stephen. Now, if you want to make a call, what will you use? Probably a cell phone, right? Before the cell phone was invented, people used payphones if they were outside or home phones if they were inside. The telephone device and system have evolved greatly since their first use. Before the telephone was invented, people used the telegraph to communicate through cable lines. The first telegraph line in Taiwan was constructed in 1877 in late Qing Dynasty. It connected Tainan and Qihou, now known as Qijing, Kaohsiung. Taiwan's early telephone systems were built by the Japanese. More than 100 towns had hand-crank telephones. Each call had to be connected by operators with manual switchboards. Dial telephones were introduced in Taiwan later. The calls were connected by automatic telephone exchanges. Push-button telephones became popular in the 1980s. Today, all calls are connected by computers.